it's very, very cold for me this moment. The worst thing is that because it's very humid, it feels even worse. So it's cold and I'm sick. I'm a little sick. But besides of that, everything is cool. Everything is okay. Yeah, just a little bit sick. I think right now I was sick too, right? Okay. I don't know if you can participate today.
Yes, yesterday I went to the doctor. Doctor,
Sorry? You can't? No puede
doctor,
ser. You can't speak, right?
yes,
Okay. Well, let's see then. Very well. So, we were checking Unit 5. We were talking about personality traits, right? We recently talked about sleep too. Okay. So, here we have a list of qualities. You will tell me which of them are positive, which of them are negative, and which are neutral. So, the first one, a compliment. What does it sound to you? Number one, a compliment. Is this something good, something positive, something negative, something neutral? What does that mean to you?
positive,
Yeah, exactly, something positive. Exactly. What is the meaning of compliment?
cumplido. Bueno,
Yes,
entiendo.
very well. So it's something positive. Very well. What about insult?
Negative,
Yes, something negative. Appropriate. Appropriate. What is that? Apropiado, right? So it's something positive. Bad form. Bad form es como decir malos modales. Bad forms. So we could say that is
Negative.
negative,
negative. And you could say good manners. Good manners son buenos modales. Bad forms serían malos modales. Yeah. Okay. Inappropriate. Inappropriate.
negative,
Yes, negative. Normal.
Neutral.
Neutral. Yes. Okay. Offensive.
negative,
Yes, it's negative. Polite.
Positive.
Positive. Rude. What is
negative,
negative exactly? Strange.
Neutral.
I'm sorry. Yes, it can be something something neutral. We have another word that is weird. Weird. también significa extraño, but weird, it's something that is, es como algo que es extraño, pero algo que es feo, malo, yeah? So weird, it would be something negative most of the time. Strange is just extraño, right? Not necessarily wrong, but weird sí sería una palabra con una connotación negativa. On the other hand, we also have the word rare. Rare. Rare es raro. Pero rare sería igual neutral. Okay, and rare basically means algo que es raro, pero no en el sentido de que rarito, sino en el sentido de que es difícil de encontrar. Okay. For example, a rare finding, un hallazgo poco común. Rare gems, como gemas raras o difíciles de encontrar. That is the meaning of rare. So we have three words, rare, weird, strange, but they mean different things, okay? Rare no se refiere a algo raro, sino algo difícil de encontrar. Bueno, aunque esa es otra definición de raro, but you wouldn't say a person. Puedes decirle a una persona, you are rare. Eso quiere decir, eres como especial, es difícil encontrar a alguien como tú. You are rare. You could say you are weird. Esto sería ofensivo. You are weird. You are strange. Bueno, existe la palabra stranger, que es un extranjero, ¿no? Pero strange es, también si lo dices a una persona, se puede tener un contexto negativo, pero el que tiene el contexto más negativo, sobre todo con personas, sería weird. Okay. Well, the next one is typical.
Neutral.
Neutral. Yes. Very good. Unusual. ¿Qué sería unusual?
Neutral.
Neutral. También es como rare. Inusual. Okay.
Teacher, could you
Yes.
repeat the pronunciation?
Unusual.
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 Thank you.
Usual, unusual. Very well. So now here's, how do you feel about these things? Here we have some costumes, some things people do, and they are different in every part of the world. Okay. So it says in number 1, you kiss people on the cheek when you meet them. This is something, how can you describe it? Is it something unusual where you live? Is it something appropriate? Is it something polite? Is it something offensive? Is it an insult? Is it a bad form? What is this?
For me, it's inappropriate because
Mm-hmm.
I just kiss the people that I know,
Mm-hmm.
and I just give my hand.
Okay, very good. Yes, in Mexico, this is something unusual. Very well. What do you think, Reina? Do you kiss people on the cheek when you meet them?
I think it's normal for 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 fiction, professional,
Okay, very good.
but
Okay. Yeah, and you know, for example, in France, in France, uh, let me see, French people. You know that in some European countries, you kiss people twice in both cheeks, right? Se besa a las personas en ambas mejillas, for example. That's one of the things they do in France. Yeah, that's customary. You can say it's customary cuando es habitual. Puedes decir it's customary. It's customary to kiss people on both cheeks, especially friends, right? And other thing is men too. Men kiss in their cheeks. And these would be considered more unusual in Mexico because men would never kiss unless, you know, but you can kiss a man in France on the cheek and it's not considered to be gay, you know? Just saying that it's something usual, something common in France. Okay, you and your classmates interrupt the teacher. How is this considered?
This is inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. It's an insult. Yeah. It's rude. Yeah. Um, very well. So interrupting in general anyone who is speaking, right? It's it's not an it's not a bad form. I told you, I think that not only it's not only a thing about the Europeans, but I think that many people consider an offense when you interrupt them while they are speaking. So even if you feel tempted, many countries and in many situations, it's better if you wait your turn to speak. Just try not to speak very much. Try to let the other person talk and wait for your turn to add the details, right? Okay, sometimes it has happened to me. We are very excited about a conversation. Está uno muy emocionado con la conversación that you forget about, um, I mean, you interrupt the person and you are not that polite. Okay, the number three is you stand very close to people when you talk to them. What is that? How is that considered here in Mexico when you stand very close to people when you talk to them? How is that considered?
Strange.
Strange. Yeah, is considered strange.
I have a question. How do you say invasivo? ¿Cómo hablas de es invasivo?
Well, you could say that you don't respect the personal
Ajá.
personal space. Yeah, you can say invasive. And for example, you know that the many uh Asiatic countries, I don't know if it's Japan, China, or Korea. I think it's in China, but in China doesn't exist the personal space. That's something different from this country from Western countries. In China, they stand very close to people when you talk to them. They don't keep the distance. That's how Chinese are because well, China is an overpopulated country. It's full of people, and the spaces are very narrow. The houses, the apartments, the public transportation, everything is so narrow, and there is not a thing like a personal space. I think this is a shock when you meet people from other countries and when they are so different from your country. Um, when you are so different from your country, you can see that there are spaces like, for example, maybe there's no big difference between a Mexican, a Spanish, uh, or a French person or an European person. There are many things that are common sense, right? Algunas cosas son muy de sentido común. But if you compare with costumes, for example, from an African country or from an Asiatic country, or even from costumes from people from the indigenous people, incluso a veces las personas indígenas nativas de México, well, they have some costumes that are different, right? Talking about Africa, for example, you can see some shocking things, right? For example, they eat using their hands, like in India too. En India, por ejemplo, te sirven la comida así servida con las manos. En África, todos comen de un solo. En Nigeria, las familias, por ejemplo, tienen un solo tazón, bueno, donde preparan la comida, como una cazuela, imagínense. Entonces sacan la comida y todos agarran de su mano de ahí. Like, you do this, you know? Yeah, it's something very shocking. It's the thing. In China, well, in China, ya saben que en Corea, por ejemplo, se comen a los perros. Ya sale una ley que ya no se los va a dar, que ya no se los coman, pero hasta 2026 creo que se va a hacer efectiva. Uh, yeah, so there are many things, right, that are very different in the world. And it's sometimes a shock, even from people from other parts of Mexico, a veces gente incluso de otras partes de México, ves que hay otras costumbres, a veces dentro de misma localidad, pero distintas familias. So, yeah, there are things that you will always be like, what the hell is that? What are you doing, right? Yeah, but in China, yeah, they have many strange animals that they eat. Se comen de todos los chinos también. Insects, bats, exotic animals, right? Well, so then in other countries, people tend to be very frank, right? In Japan, for example, it's incorrect to say no. En Japón no puedes decir que no. Es como decir no es un tabú en Japón. What it means is, for example, if you go to Japan, for example, you go for an ice cream, yeah, and the ice cream, and I don't know, they don't have peach ice cream, y ya no se les acabó el helado de durazno. Entonces no te pueden decir que no. Los japoneses como un tabú decir no. No te van a decir, no, no lo tengo. I'm sorry, I don't have it. Japanese have a taboo. They will try to use other words. Intentarán decirte no sé, no, no querrás mejor uno no sé, de vainilla. But they are not used to saying no. I was just checking the interview from a man. So he went to a restaurant in Japan, fue a un restaurante en Japón, and they served him the water. He had water, tenía agua. So he wanted more water, quería más agua, and he asked if she could serve in the glass. Quería que la chica le sirviera en el mismo vaso en el que le sirviera agua en el vaso donde ya le había servido. But like she had the the jug, tenía la jarra de agua. But there was a politic in the restaurant. There were rules in the restaurant that didn't allow that. She couldn't um she couldn't just serve it in the same glass. It needed to be a new one. Necesitaba ser un vaso nuevo, o sea, le podías traer agua nuevamente, pero sería de un vaso nuevo, no le podía servir en el mismo vaso. Well, instead of saying that, en lugar de decir, no, eso no se puede, pero le puedo traer en otro vaso, the girl was so shocked. She was like frozen, se congeló, se paralizó, no. It's like so difficult to say no. And they're very polite about it, so the man had to ask her, okay, can you serve me water in a different glass? And that's how she brought the glass of water. Entonces el hombre ya lo único que hizo fue preguntarle, bueno, ¿me puedes traer agua en otro vaso distinto? Y ya fue que la mujer le trajo agua, porque en Japón no es correcto decir no. It's something very, you know, and that's what's one of the things they do in Japan. Also in Japan, you would avoid to talk about your problems, and you would avoid to ask for help. Um, yeah, in Japan, they are very close about feelings when it comes to this. Otra de las características es que si los japoneses pueden ser bastante cerrados en cuestión de, por ejemplo, pedir ayuda o de hablar acerca de sus emociones. They basically if you ask a favor, right? Well, the other person would ask it in return. Pedir un favor sería como tú haces el favor, pides un favor, pero es como el sentimiento de que la persona va a querer algo a cambio, entonces prefieren mejor no hacerlo. Yeah, it's a little bit strange. So, culture from countries can be very different, right? Okay, this is number 4. You and your parents talk honestly and openly. What is this in your country? Is this in Mexico? Is this something normal? You talk honestly and openly.
It's normal and appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Very good. It's normal, it's appropriate. Correct. Yes. I think this is in every country. Your best friend calls you after 11 p.m.
It's a bad form.
Yeah,
It's inappropriate.
it's inappropriate. Yeah. Usually, unless it's an emergency, right? Okay, number 6, you start a conversation with a stranger on a bus or subway.
It's typical, normal.
It's typical. Um, I would say it's unusual for me. With a stranger, es empezar una conversación con un extraño en un autobús. For me, it's unusual.
For me, it's strange.
Mhm. Yeah, because you're wondering, what does this person want from me? ¿Qué quiere esta persona de mí? ¿Le gusto? ¿Me quiere robar? I don't know. Like there could be many things, right? Now, if it's something different, ¿no? Si fuera por ejemplo un abuelito, una abuelita, a lo mejor diría, bueno, está siendo amigable, ¿no? It depends, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the point is that when it comes to conversation with a stranger, it can be difficult, but you remember that we have something that is called a small talk. Be able to small talk. Small talk es la capacidad para romper el hielo y tener una conversación con un extraño utilizando temas triviales, que a la vez no sea tan general que sea aburrido. ¿Ya? We're going to talk about small talk in a moment, but we are going to see the next video where we are going to check some of the strangest customs. Some of the strangest customs in the world. Yeah, for example, we have China and Taiwan. Burping is the highest form of flattery. It means you like the food. Yeah, if you go to a friend's house, if you go to uh if you go to a business, if you go to a business dinner, a lo mejor esto les parezca mentira, pero sí es así. A lo mejor ya lo habían escuchado. Eructar en China y en Taiwán después de comer es una forma de halagar a la otra persona, de que, sobre todo el anfitrión, de que te gustó la comida. ¿Ya? So way of saying that you like the food, and the host considers the noise a compliment. Para el que te invita a la comida es como muchas gracias. Ah, bueno, te gustó la comida, ¿no? And slurping your noodles, o sea, que a veces por ejemplo, saben que a veces que tomar una sopa y sorberla, y hacer ese ruido, aquí muchas veces se considera bueno, es desagradable y definitivamente no es una norma de etiqueta, ¿no? No es algo bueno. Pero también en China, esto es como igualmente señal de respeto. In China and Taiwan, burping and slurping your noodles. That is one of the costumes. Entonces, incluso estás en una reunión de negocios y te invita, no sé, la empresa a, no sé, cualquier cosa. Entonces, en frente de todos esos caballeros y personas importantes, debes de eructar. Yeah. Strange, right? Maybe this is some information that you didn't want to know, but yeah, there are many things. So let's watch the next video. Second. Okay, let's see.
And we forget that there are so many different cultures in the world, but every country has its own etiquette that is often considered strange or weird by travelers.
On the other hand, they might think the same of us when they come to our country. In the end, it's all a matter of paradigm and perspective. So, without further ado, let's dive into these interesting examples of strange etiquette around the world. Stay tuned to number 1 to find out where you're actually encouraged to make a mess when you eat. Number 10. Paying compliments. When you're meeting someone for the first time, it's perfectly normal to compliment something they're wearing or to compliment an item they have by their side. This is quite common to see in the Western world. For example, you might say things such as, "I love the dress you're wearing," or "That shirt looks lovely on you," and stuff like that. We might even go one step further and say something like, "Where'd you pick up that hat? I'd love to get me one." Although this practice is quite common and normal in our society, it's quite different in the Middle East.
From Poland, un amigo de Polonia, estábamos en un evento y se acercó y dijo, vine hasta aquí del otro lado solamente para decirte que me gusta tu traje. And then he left.
East and some African countries such as Senegal and Nigeria. In these regions of the world, expressing such a direct compliment will be interpreted as your wish to possess the item. These countries have developed a special approach to hospitality, and they perceive their guests as a person who's to be respected and taken care of in every possible way. So if you say, "That coat is wonderful," they'll give it to you, or be forced to offer you something else, which is even better.
You see, igual, in this country, a ver, ¿qué país es? Si le dices, ay, qué bonita corbata, estás obligado a darle tu corbata. Literally, it looks like a joke, ¿no? Como, dale tu corbata, dale. Yeah, but it's a costume in some countries, es una muestra de hospitalidad. Dice, ay, me gusta, ay, qué bonita, no sé, cualquier cosa, ¿no?
Countries have
Lo
developed a
quitas en ese
special
momento y se
approach to
lo das.
hospitality, and they perceive their guests as a person who's to be respected and taken care of in every possible way. So if you say, "That coat is wonderful,"
Ajá. Ok, qué bonito abrigo. Bueno, pues te lo quitas y se
they'll
lo das.
give it to you, or be forced to offer you something else, which is even better and more expensive. Number 9. Using your hands when eating.
This is what I told
In North
you.
America, we tend to
Usar
teach
las
our
manos
younger
para
generation
comer. Bueno, o
table
sea, una
manners
cosa es tacos,
that include
pizza,
using utensils for most meals. So when we see people eating with their hands, we tend to see this as pretty strange, especially during formal occasions. But in some countries, this is turned upside down. For example, if you decide to eat a burrito in Mexico and you use a knife and fork,
yeah, of course. Come on. ¿Quién se come un burrito con tenedor, no?
you will definitely be going against the norm. You should always eat with your hands. In Germany, it is wrong to use a knife to cut a boiled potato. This is seen as a sign of utter disrespect for the chef because it goes to show that the potato isn't cooked well. But there are also many countries where you're only allowed to eat with your hands. In India, for
India.
example, you should never use a fork because they tend to eat everything with their hands. Food is considered sacred in a way, and the way to pay respect
El
to the
arroz
food
con
is
las
to
manos se
eat it with
come.
your hands. Number 8. Tipping the waiter. When you're at a restaurant,
Dar propina. Tipping the waiter. Yeah, tips. Ay, aquí todo es propina. Aquí siempre que sales tienes que planear al menos un 10% de propina. In some restaurants, en restaurantes incluso nos dijeron mínimo es el 15. Bueno, no les di nada, porque por eso, ¿no? Por haber condicionado la propina, but in some countries it's offensive. Es una ofensa en muchos países ofrecer una propina. In Europe, for example, en Europa no existe la propina. I mean, you can offer it, si lo das como mesero va a estar súper contento, pero no se espera que des propina. Muchas veces se va a cobrar algo que se llama algo que se llama como, no me acuerdo cómo es en español, pero it's like the plate. Literalmente te cobran, es como un tipo de servicio, un tipo de propina que ya viene incluida. eh, eh, que le llaman por servirte todos los cubiertos, ¿no? In that it's included, entonces no tienes que dar propina. Yeah. But this is a thing from Americans, es una cosa de los americanos. The point of giving tips in the United States is to keep prices low. Si tú das propinas en todos lados, bueno, los precios de las cosas se mantienen bajos, ¿no? Sí, tip significa propina, tip. Yeah, so they say that por eso según Estados Unidos dan propinas y generosas propinas, según porque esto ayuda a mantener los precios bajos. And in Mexico, here we do it because the salaries are not the best y los salarios pues son malos y entonces se tiene que dar una propina, ¿no? You need to give, for example, when you go to the supermarket, eso no existe en otros lugares, que le des dinero a alguien que empaca tus cosas, ¿no? No hay viene, no hay eso, ¿no? Y en México es como cada vez que sales, hay que darle viene. Cuando estás en el semáforo, otra moneda al que te limpia el vidrio. And then you go to the bridge, vas subiendo al puente, ahí hay otra persona, ¿no? There are many beggars, muchas personas pidiendo dinero, muchos también que piden propina. No, in fact, they even get offended, se ofenden aquí en Cancún o en Playa del Carmen si no les das propina. That happened to us, we took a taxi, era un colectivo, ¿no? Que te dejaba cierta parte. Ok, how much was it? ¿Cuánto cuesta? Me dieron un precio, 250. Ok. Then you arrive y el chofer nos pidió propina. Like, it's like, but we were told this price y nos digo este precio. No te pagan. Bueno, no le dijimos así, pero se ofendió porque no le dimos propina, ¿no? It's like, it's very, that's why they hear taxis. Aquí los taxis la mayoría de las personas pues no les agrada, ¿no? Los taxistas. Because they always over tips. And on the other hand, if you go to other countries like in China, Japan, darle una propina a alguien es un insulto porque le estás diciendo que no ganas lo suficiente y que es como, ay, pobrecito, vamos a darle una propina. Entonces se ofenden las personas. Eso es en otros países.
And you really like your food and service, you'll automatically tip the waiter or waitress who served you. And people that don't tip are considered disrespectful or cheap. But in Japan, the situation is quite different. In this country, tips are out of the question. Japan is very strict when it comes to work ethics, and workers are encouraged to be at their absolute best when working for a company. And this goes for every company, big and small, including small businesses such as restaurants. If you
Eso es
tip
lo
a
bueno
waiter,
de Japón. Las empresas son muy excelentes. No importa qué tan grande o qué tan pequeña, tienen una ética laboral envidiable.
in Japan, it could be
Bueno,
interpreted
pero son tan estrictos que se suicidan también mucho, ¿no?
like you are not satisfied with the service provided, or that you see the waiter worthy of your charity, which is the ultimate offense. There have been numerous cases of waiters returning tip money to their customers because they refuse to be seen in such a way. If you want to pay respect to a waiter in Japan, the best thing would be to give them a small present. But most of the time, a bow and a sincere thank you are more than enough. Number 7. Giving flowers. You must be extra careful with flowers because they can be interpreted in a different way worldwide. The symbolism of flowers has been developed through centuries, and it's really hard to change that many years of deep cultural influence. This problem is more prominent when a particular flower has other meanings, such as a symbol of mourning or death. For example, in France and Germany, common cemetery flowers are carnations. So be careful if you want to bring someone a carnation for a date. On the other hand, in China, white flowers are a symbol of mourning and grieving and should be avoided for happy occasions.
You know that white flowers in China mean death. White means death. It represents death. So you should avoid give white flowers for happy occasions. Prácticamente es como desearle la muerte a alguien, le das flores blancas y le estás deseando la muerte.
Yellow flowers symbolize hatred in Russia and Iran, and in Siberia, they symbolize jealousy. Definitely not suggested to be given to lovers or romantic interests. The number of flowers can also be a big problem. In France, an even number of flowers is a good thing, but in China, it's the even numbers which are considered ominous, while odd numbers are the lucky ones. Seriously though, who knew giving flowers could be so tricky?
Incluso si das un número de flores par, es ofensivo. En China tienes que dar un número impar.
Number 6. Sticking out your tongue. Although there are some cute and playful ways to stick out your tongue at someone, most people consider this a sign of disrespect. But the world is a wonderful place, and there are all kinds of customs, including one for sticking out your tongue. In New Caledonia, far in the Pacific Ocean, this gesture is actually something positive. It represents energy and wisdom, but also a desire for having these qualities. A similar thing happens in Tibet. If you stick out your tongue there, it actually means you are greeting someone with due respect. According to a Tibetan belief, by doing this, you prove that you don't have a black tongue. And why would you have a black tongue, you ask? Well, if you do, you're believed to be a descendant of an evil king who allegedly had one. Number 5. Slurping. Imagine slurping while you're enjoying your meal in a restaurant. Pretty embarrassing, right? Well, not in all countries. In fact, in a great number of Asian countries, especially in the Far East, it's actually quite nice to slurp while eating. How come? Well, in places such as China and Japan, if you slurp your meal, it actually means you're enjoying your food, because it's just that good. It is also a sign of high praise to slurp your soup, for example, because it means it's just so good that you couldn't wait for it to cool off. On the other hand, if you decide not to slurp while eating, it could be
Slurp es como sorber la sopa. Ajá. Slurp.
interpreted that you don't like the food. The same thing applies to drinking tea. It's also good to slurp it, otherwise your host might think you hate it. Number 4. Spitting. Nothing is worse than spitting, especially in public. It is a sign of disrespect and a total lack of etiquette. If you really want to insult someone, just spit at them right in the face. Seriously, nasty. But spitting is also a sign of good things in distant parts.
I don't understand people who make noise, no? They're walking on the street and they sound and they spit. No. It's so disgusting. Sí, a mí eso me da también un montón de cosas cuando escupen en la calle y todavía hacen ruido antes como en la garganta y luego escupen. That's so disgusting.
Parts of the world. For example, the famous Maasai people of Africa see things in a different way. For them, spitting in public is not awkward at all. They spit at each other in the form of social gesture. That's their way of shaking hands. And not only that, they spit on a young child if it passes by an elderly member of the tribe. And this is not offensive at all, but rather welcoming, because it's seen as a sign of blessing, wishing for health, prosperity, long life. You get the picture. The same thing happens when a new baby is born. People from miles around come to pay their respects and spit on the newborn baby. No thank you. Number 3, salting the food. If you're, let's say, in a restaurant in the US and your food is not salty, no problem. You'll simply take a shaker and salt it. And although it's quite normal to do this in Western culture, it's completely different in Egypt. If you want to salt your food in Egypt, it will immediately be interpreted as a sign of disrespect. By salting your food, you are actually implying that the chef didn't do a good job, and as a result of that, you're not satisfied with your meal. The idea behind this is that the chef is the author of the meal. The chef gives the flavor to the meal, making it exactly what it is. If you, by any means, try to change the original flavor of the food you're given, you're actually changing the chef's recipe and directly insulting them. And they interpret that you think low of them and their cooking skills. The same thing applies to chefs in Portugal. If you don't see a salt shaker on your table, don't ask for one, because they will take it as an insult. I kind of get that though. It's like when I cook the perfect steak and someone asks for steak sauce. Yet, I'm talking about you. You know who you are. Number 2, burping. If a baby burps, that's one thing. But once you're over the age of like 3, if you burp at a restaurant, you'll definitely elicit stares. Well, that's us and our civilized behavior. But there are other countries where it's great to burp, especially in public places. In China, Turkey, and some parts of the Middle East, burping is seen as a good thing to do. If you burp after a meal, it means you've really enjoyed your food. Burping in these cultures is considered a real compliment to the chef. But there's a catch. You are not required to burp after every meal. In fact, you shouldn't. Why? Well, burping out of respect should only happen when the meal is really good. If you just had a snack or a small casual meal, there's no need to burp after it. But if you had yourself a true feast and you loved the food, then burping is absolutely expected. Also, in Turkey, you shouldn't start eating before the oldest person at the table starts to eat. This is also a part of their dining etiquette to show respect for the elderly. Compliments to the chef. Number 1, spilling food and drink. Burping at the table is one thing, but spilling your food is a whole different level entirely. However, in some cultures, spilling your food and drink is a desired thing to do. Believe it or not. Let's start with Afghanistan. If you drop your bread on the floor, you don't throw it away. You pick it up, kiss it, and then put it back where it was on your plate, or next to it. The reason is that people cherish food in this country so much that this is a sign of utmost respect. In several countries of South America, such as Bolivia, Chile, and Peru, if you're drinking something, you're expected to spill a few drops on the floor before you take your first sip and say the words "Para la Pachamama," which is like expressing thanks to the goddess of fertility. In China, it's not a problem if you leave a couple of stains on the tablecloth after finishing your meal. This is not a sign of rude behavior and bad manners, but, in fact, a sign that the food was great and that you truly enjoyed your meal. Just don't overdo it, of course. What are some other cultural differences that you can think of?
Do you know any cultural differences from other countries?
I don't remember the country, but it's avoid to kiss on public in the street. But I don't know the country.
I don't know. No, I never heard of it. Could be maybe an Islamic country. Could be, I don't know, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. Yeah. Yeah, there are some things in Arabic countries that they are very careful with that. Okay, so let's see. We're going to learn how to make sentences talking about culture with gerund phrases. Okay, so check. You can say something when you talk about costumes. It's rude to ignore your conversation partner. It's rude to ignore your conversation partner. So here we start with the word it's. Then you use the adjective rude, and then you use the infinitive, verb infinitive to ignore. Es grosero ignorar a tu compañero que está hablando contigo. Okay, so here I'm saying it's rude, but I'm not saying immediately what is rude, no? Empiezo simplemente diciendo es grosero. Que es grosero to ignore your conversation partner. But here I wrote the same sentence, que es la misma oración, pero empiezo con el verbo. Ignorar a tu compañero de conversación es grosero. Aquí empiezo diciendo que es grosero. It's rude. Aquí empiezo diciendo ignorar. Es grosero. So there are two ways you can say. Son dos formas de decirlo. All right. Let's see now. It's considered impolite to interrupt people. es considerado mal educado interrumpir a las personas. Interrumpir a las personas es considerado algo grosero, mal educado. It's customary. ¿Alguien recuerda que es customary? Do you remember? What is the meaning of customary? What is it's customary?
Habitual, como usual, algo así.
Es habitual para los halagadores decir cosas buenas sobre otros. Decir cosas buenas acerca de otros es habitual para el halagador. So there are two ways. You can start with its adjective, infinitive, or you can use a verb in ing, the action, and then you say how it is. All right, so you can start like this, or you can start the sentence like this. Okay, so I will ask you, please work on these exercises. Vamos a reescribir estas oraciones en la forma opuesta. Okay, aquí dice, it's inappropriate to talk about. Estoy utilizando la forma de infinitivo. It's inappropriate, es inadecuado hablar de política en el trabajo o la escuela. Aquí lo voy a reescribir de otra forma. Hablar de política en el trabajo o la escuela es inapropiado. So here you are using the gerund. Aquí se está utilizando gerundio. Aquí estaba empezando con el adjetivo. So you basically need to invert. Aquí el number 2 es using. Estoy empezando con gerundio. Usar ciertos gestos es maleducado en algunos países. Ok, entonces voy a decir, es maleducado usar ciertos gestos en algunos países. Ok, so you're going to change the sentence to the opposite. So here we go. Let me send your homework to WhatsApp. And hope to see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Okay.
¿Se lo enviamos o cómo se le hace? ¿Cómo es eso?
Sorry?
¿La tarea que dice que le va a enviar? ¿La tarea se le envía o cómo es?
Yes, I did it. Ya lo envié. You can just write there on WhatsApp. Pueden escribir las oraciones ahí en WhatsApp o pueden en la foto como escribir, editar la foto y escribir.
Ok.
Okay. Well, thank you so